So I am Deshauna Spencer, and I am the CEO of kweliTV. We are an internet streaming network. We're dedicated to the issues, the stories, and the culture of the global Black community. We have independent films, documentaries, web shows for the entire African diaspora. And we do this great series called Meet the Filmmaker, where we talk to really awesome filmmakers who have really great content. And I'm really excited to talk to Nikki Brake-Sillá. She is the director of Open Wound, which is a really awesome documentary and a very personal documentary too. So I'm really excited to talk to you this evening. Thank you so much for being with us here at kweliTV. Yeah, I'm so excited. So I watched it again today just to, refresh my memory when I watched it the first time. And I guess we wanted to start the conversation about, being a filmmaker and doing a documentary that's so personal. Because I'm talked to a lot of filmmakers when they do documentaries, they may not know the person, they do a lot of research to find the perfect match, for the perfect story, and then they're having to gain so much trust. But when it's your family, I can only imagine the type of interaction you may have to have, or conversations you have to have, or leg pulling you have to be able to have an open conversation about, especially death in the family.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of cajoling initially when I approached my family about it. My nana was on board, my uncle, my cousin. They're like, "Oh, okay, you're in school, you want to make a film. Okay, fine, whatever."
Right.
My mom was definitely reticent and said that she would be fine as long as she had a signal that she could do that I would stop rolling. And I was like, okay, no. But, I was like, okay, sure, fine. If that's what you need to hear in order to feel comfortable, then that'll be fine. But I did tell her, I was like, but that doesn't mean I'm actually going to stop rolling.
Right. What was the conversation like, just to say, because watching your mother, for instance, and the whole documentary focuses on family members taking death different ways. Your uncle, he seems to be open. Of course, he's hurt, but your mom, she's hurting whenever, she sees a picture, she starts to cry. How long did it take you to even get her to a point to have the cameras rolling and for her to start open up even just a little bit?
I was actually really surprised at how open she was. And I think she kind of surprised herself too. During the process, I could tell that it was definitely a catharsis for her. I mean, we literally didn't talk about my aunt from her death until that film.
Wow.
Basically, casually in conversation, I would think about her, on her birthday, and, close to my birthday, of course, my cousin was a constant reminder, but she wasn't mentioned.
Wow.
So I think that was a chance for her to really, remember the good times that she had with her sister and not just focus on this one event that defined her life.
Right. And just for people who may not have seen the documentary, if you can just give a brief, I know, right? You all should have seen it. You should have done your homework before tuning in. Exactly. But for those, right. But for those who may not have seen it, if you can just give a brief overview about the documentary.
So Open Wound is about how my family deals with the death of my aunt. She was murdered when I was 6 years old. And after her death, we stopped talking about her. And every year, the man who was responsible for her death is up for parole.
And I thought that was interesting too. Every year, is that normal? Because I thought, how much time did he get? And then why did he get up for parole every year? I've never heard of that before.
So in North Carolina, he was sentenced to life, but in North Carolina, life is 30 years.
Oh, okay.
And so because he murdered my aunt when he was 19, for every good behavior year you have, that's a year off of your sentence. So at 15 years, he was eligible for parole.
Oh, okay.
Charged with second-degree murder.
So was it
And so each year, he's up for parole. And my mom would go by herself. And with Captain Sears, who was the officer on the scene, and he actually knew my aunt too. But she would do that by herself, which I always thought was horrifying. I'm like, why are you the only one who has to shuttle and shoulder this burden and constantly relive, the most horrific day in your sister's life by yourself. Like, I didn't think that was fair for her to have to go through that alone.
Right. And in the documentary, you attend the hearing with your mom in that particular instance. And you mentioned really learning more. I mean, you were 6, so that's very young. I mean, when someone passes away when you're that young, we really don't remember a whole lot about them.
I actually clearly remember the day she died.
Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember when my mom woke us up and took us to her girlfriend's house. I remember going up my grandmother's steps and everyone was there, and I was super excited because I thought it was a surprise because my birthday had been 6 days prior. And then I stopped and I was like, where's Aunt Janie? So no, I definitely clearly remember that.
And in the documentary, well, I know you were a student at the time you did the documentary. Did you have a different ideas for, what you thought you wanted to focus your studies on in particular documentary? Did you know from day one, I want to do a documentary about my family's experience? Did you always know you wanted to kind of dig in a little deeper about your aunt's death?
Yeah, it was actually part of my grad school application was, I spoke about how my family doesn't talk about her death and how that shaped my life, and how I definitely wanted to make a movie about her story. And in the film, I wasn't concerned with like Grady's life. I didn't want the story to, to be hijacked by him.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, he's not. He was just a catalyst. He's not what I want people to focus on.
Right. And you did a really good job at that.
Oh, thanks.
So also talk about, I know you said your mom said in certain parts, like, okay, if I don't want to talk about this, I'm going to give a cue. Did that happen a lot throughout the filming of your documentary?
In the classroom, the classroom scene.
Right.
That was the one time it happened. It's funny. I was actually the one who said to stop rolling in the graveyard, like the whole graveyard scene.
Yeah.
But I told my producer and my cinematographer beforehand, I was like, listen, there might come a point where I ask y'all to stop rolling. Just don't listen. I don't care how persistent I am. Like, just keep it going. And so, yeah, there was definitely, that was the one time that I was like, you know what, I'm done. This is like, I don't want to be a part of this particular scope of the story anymore. So I think that's the one thing that I definitely didn't take into consideration, that as much as I was following my family, I was also very much a part of the story. I wasn't just the person behind the camera or just hanging out writing stuff. It was like I was a character in the story too. So that was a little difficult.
Right. Yeah, because throughout the documentary, you're basically acting as like a journalist, asking questions, being straightforward. But then in the graveyard scene where I guess you can find your aunt's marker, which, did you ever find it, by the way? Was it ever found?
Yeah, I have a marker.
And I guess no one, because of how she was killed and the pain, I guess your family members never really visited to make sure it was there, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Wow. And that's when you broke down, because you're like, okay, I'm here expecting to see your grandma, your aunt next, your aunt next to your grandmother, and she's not there. As a filmmaker, how do you deal with situations like that, where it's a very unique situation, of course, because this is a story about your family, so it's not a typical situation that filmmakers go through, but what was the experience like for you?
As a filmmaker, outside of myself, I'm like, oh, that's gold.
Right.
That's a fantastic plot point. Here's someone that's never talked about in their family, and all you have are like these smattering of memories, and then you come up and their grave literally is not marked.
Right.
As a person being inside of it, I'm like, this freaking sucks. Yeah. But, I felt that in cutting it, it became really important to be sensitive to everyone's emotions and not play on the easy stuff. As far as, I didn't think it was important to see, to see the tears. You can hear it. You can hear how traumatizing it is for my mom when she's going through the photo album. You don't need to see that.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that it was still incredibly tactful and compassionate, because this is something that my family still has to deal with every day. And I want it to be something that they're not I don't want to relive the trauma. Like I want it to be something that they can use to grow and to remember like the good times about Janie and not just this one event.
Right. And in our community, the Black community, a lot of times when things happen, it's like if you talk about it outside of our walls, it means you're telling your business. You know how it was growing up, right? Don't you tell that you can tell anything. I mean, did you feel like you were sort of doing that in this documentary in a way where you sort of airing out some things that, typically growing up you're not supposed to say or say in public out in the open?
Part of it in the only sense that I believe that grief is really private.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the one thing that I had the hardest part with, is that it's, you're literally showing your family at their most, vulnerable moments. And I think that everyone grieves differently. And so that was the thing that I was most cognizant about, is it's a private moment, but I also think it's really important that other people realize that you can work through it and you can get past it. And it is really important to talk about the person who you lost and the love that you felt for them, and not just focus on their death. And I think that when you lose someone tragically like that, that's all you can focus on, and you forget, you forget the other stuff.
Right. Especially how she passed. I mean, she was stabbed, 20 plus times, and the knife was kind of like stuck in her or something like that at one point.
It was incredibly graphic. It was broken off, and it was. And
then she was burned to death. I mean, it is a pretty traumatic thing, and I think for a family member, especially a sibling or a parent, I saw your grandmother, but your great grandmother, right? Was it your great
grandmother? Yes, okay. My grandmother passed in '98.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure she was probably pretty traumatized as well about what happened to her daughter.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. The worst thing to happen is to lose a child.
Right. But your grandmother, or great grandmother, she was. I really thought she was a refreshing part of the story. Even though there's this death and someone who died young and tragically, there was this elder in the family who was full of life and really the glue still of the family. And I thought that was a really important part to show as well.
She's a hoot. She passed in 2007. She passed actually a week after I screened.
Really? Did she get a chance to watch it?
No, but I told her about it. We talked about it all the time. So she's
right. But I mean, she was like 97 or 96 in the documentary. So so she lived a long life.
Funny.
Yeah, she was. Because the thing is that she was 95. Like, no, she was like, happy 95th birthday. Like, no, you're 96 actually, but if you're that old, you can't forget. Exactly. What do you hope people get out of the documentary? Especially for other people, especially family members who may have experienced similar circumstances.
Actually, that's a good question. No one's approached me who has had similar circumstances, which I did find was pretty interesting. I mean, it was well received at the screening. My mom carries a copy of it around with her in her purse, so I feel like that says a lot about how far she's come with it and how open she is and willing she is to talk about it now. But grief is really private and personal. And I think in this day and age where you're inundated with so much violence and and it's just like, one thing after the other. I think people just have a hard time finding those moments to really sit and see how something has affected them. And so, and people haven't really come up to share their stories about it.
Maybe that's the second part, people allowing people to share stories. I mean, in my family, we've experienced, tragedy. My cousin and my uncle were both murdered. They were shot. They weren't brutally murdered the way your aunt was murdered. But I really do find it interesting that a lot of people did not mention that or they have not experienced similar instances in their families, actually, because the documentary, the name is, to me, is absolutely perfect. Open Wound, like literally what your mom was basically experiencing is this wound that, anytime anyone touched it or went near it, it was too much for her.
Yeah.
Is that, I'm sure
Yeah,
it's probably why it came with the name.
And it wasn't until I was actually with her in it that I understood that for her, it really is like her sister died the day before. And I can't fathom that at all. And as soon as I saw that, and I've never lost a sibling, and so I can't empathize, but I can definitely sympathize. Like, I can't imagine replaying that moment every single day. And then going to the anniversary of the man who killed your sister's parole hearing every year. Like, that's your reminder. So, and I'm from a family and, we tell stories and we tease each other and we joke and, we pick on each other all the time, but no one tells stories about my aunt. So.
Yeah, because it's too much. And another part, to me, like your mom, how much it affected her, and then your aunt's daughter, her approach to her mother being brutally murdered. Okay, you were 6, so how old was your cousin? Wow, wow. And for her, I mean, she says, she forgave this guy, and it really made me think about some of the recent tragedies, like the happened in South Carolina with the guy who went in the church, and the fact that there's been this debate in the Black community about, do we forgive so quickly? Saying, well, Jesus wants us to forgive, and that's kind of what I thought about. I mean, what were your thoughts when she said that she's forgiven him, and the whole idea? I thought her discussion about poison, is basically, if you don't forgive, it's like poison. I understand her point, but what were your thoughts
when she talked about it? My first thought, and it still is, I'm like, she's a much better person than I am, because I can't, like, I can't forgive him, but I can appreciate that she has found peace. Because she's right. You can't hold on to something like that and it not affect your everyday, it not affect your family, it not affect, how you perceive other relationships in your life. So I definitely hear it on an, emotional, intelligent level. But for myself, I can't do it. I hold.
Is that why your mom didn't want her to go to the hearing with her?
She was going to say that, I've forgiven him, and being the daughter, that would hold more sway with the parole hearing. And my whole point was, that's not your decision to make at all.
Right. So does she go now, or does the daughter go now?
I don't know recently, but I know he did go to one of the hearings. Yes.
And he's still in prison. Okay. Wow. The film was like, 18, 20 minutes long, but it was a very jam-packed documentary, in my opinion, just because of the subject matter. As a documentary filmmaker, when you're trying to pick subjects, what are some of the things that you look for first when you think about, okay, will this make a particular impact or a particular message?
I look for something that I would want to see. And that's how I decide if I'm going to make like the next subject for my film. I'm like, is it something that I want to see? And if I don't want to see it, then obviously it's not going to be something that I'm going to put work and time and effort to it. But as long as it's from, conception to birth, as long as it's still something that I want to see, then that's the thing that's most important to me. And I feel that there's so many stories out there that people aren't allowed to tell because of funding or anything like that, or because it started out as one thing and then because of funding, they've had to morph it and turn it into something that's not their vision because of everything else that's associated with it. So that's why it's really important to me to stay true to my story. Like, I've got to look at myself in the mirror.
Right. Did your story change at all? Because I do talk to a lot of filmmakers where when they were thinking about the beginning process, okay, this is going to be the storyline for the documentary. And then as you film, things sort of change because life is life. And So you sometimes you never know. So did it change for
Not
you at
really, but that's
all?
only because it's my family. And like I know my family. I know
Mm-hmm.
them really well. If
Right,
I
right.
didn't know them, then there would be things that of course I wouldn't be expecting, like the graveyard or, my mom not wanting my cousin to be there. But because
Right.
they are my family and we're so close, there weren't really any surprises per se.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's when I can't really answer because I am so tied into the story. I'm trying to think if like what would I'm trying
Even, mhm.
to
Or was it even like even the editing process? Because for something as traumatic as that, you have to. It's still your family, so you want to tell the truth, but then you want to protect your family too. And some, you mentioned earlier about being very delicate, which I think you were very delicate in how you portray your family to not. I mean, it's your mama, so you don't want to put her in the negative light. You don't want her. I mean, she carries it around, so
yeah.
obviously you did a good job. But I'm pretty sure in the editing room, if you can talk about, just the process of having something so close to you and you're editing it to get condense it. I mean, were there feelings involved as you were going through the documentary and trying to find the best pieces to put in the
The things
film?
that were the hardest in culling were the pictures. So I scanned,
Mhm.
all the pictures from childhood and um, tried to find the stories behind those. The three little girls in the Super 8, like that was something that I thought was really important to kind of
Mhm.
tie like the past and the present together. But I know it's going to sound lame, but it wasn't as difficult as I thought because I lived it. And it's something that I
Mhm.
didn't just start thinking about making this film. It's something that I'd been thinking about for years and years and years before I was even in grad school. I've written about it. So I felt like I had pre-production for a decade and then grad school, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna
Right.
make this film now, and now I have the resources to do it. So in that, yeah,
Talk. Wow. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something you lived every single day. So of course, by the time you
yeah,
made it more of a
right.
relief, right?
Um,
By the time you finally got a chance to do it. Were you nervous when your family screened
oh,
it, what they would think of
absolutely,
it?
absolutely, because at the end of the day, they're still my family. Everybody goes home. They're like, oh, yeah, that's so great. So powerful, et cetera, et cetera. But
Mhm.
then, if my mom or my Nana didn't like it, then I have to, or my cousin didn't like it, then I have to live with that. I'm like, I'm proud of it, but it's my interpretation of their story. So if they don't agree with it, and
Mhm.
then it's right around the holidays, I don't want I don't
Right.
want there to be anything contentious or for people to be resentful or to not ever trust me again.
Did you in the documentary you mentioned as you were walking out of the courthouse, you were mentioning that you never really heard your mom um, talk about your aunt. Did you learn a lot about your aunt in that just during this whole process, things that you probably didn't even know because you were so young and they never
I
talked about her at
did.
all?
I did. So, um,
Hmm.
my aunt was incredibly classy, incredibly classy.
Hmm.
She's the oldest child. So she had, everything that comes with that. And she was kind of the one who always toed the line. My mom, I'm
Hmm.
definitely my mom's daughter. She kind of liked to stir things up. She's the middle child, but she's the youngest girl.
Hmm. I'm
Yeah,
the middle child, so I get
all
it. I'm the crazy rebel.
so, yeah, and how loved she was from,
Hmm.
people who'd work with her, people outside of the family, friends of mine from high school that, we grew up together in Rocky Mountain. They're like, no, we totally remember when that happened. And then their parents were like, she was just such an amazing, beautiful spirit. And so that was always really nice to hear.
Right.
I mean, it's always nice to
Right.
assume
It
because you're
looks
like,
like it
yeah, my
was.
family's awesome. But when you hear
Well, of course, for them to like to do this documentary, I mean, they are pretty awesome because I'm not sure how many families would allow cameras to roll in the most vulnerable state. So your family is awesome. It looks like someone has a question. John Haynes, he says, just curious, did you have any family dream killers? I guess were any people who maybe said, don't do it when you were
No,
approaching them
my
about the
family was incredibly
documentary?
supportive about it. They were hesitant, but they were definitely incredibly supportive.
Mm-hmm.
There was never at any point, someone was like, I don't think you should make this film, or do you think this is a good idea? Honestly, I don't even think they were like, well, she's gonna do it.
Right, like, yeah, I'm gonna do it
So
regardless, right?
we can be on board and it'll be a pleasant experience, or we're not.
Right. He says awesome. He messaged back, so he's very happy with your answer. If you can see it on the side. Another thing just about doing documentaries in general, which is very different when it's a subject you don't know. Like I did a documentary, I didn't know the people, and just having to get them used to a camera, opening up. I know for some films, if people say, okay, you have the camera sitting there, but it's not rolling, just so people get comfortable with not to forget that the camera is there. Were there any techniques that you used to get your family accustomed to you filming them and asking
Absolutely. And a
questions?
huge part in that, because they were my family, so you definitely fall into the whole like mother, daughter, great grandmother, great granddaughter. So I defer to my elders all the time, and I'm not going to be disrespectful. But my crew was amazing at making my family feel comfortable, and they were part of the family. My cinematographer, Vin Venturella, and my producer, Tony Clomax. I mean, they were with me. They were there during my vulnerable moments. And, they flirted with my grandmother, my Nana. She flirted with them. The people were at, birthday dinners. So they made sure that I was taken care of and that my family was taken care of for me. And that was, a huge, huge help. I didn't have to worry about, how to quote unquote manage my family, because I knew that my producer, my cinematographer definitely had their best interests at heart too. And I feel like that's really rare to find. I'm lucky enough to have found that, via happenstance in grad school was even better. So even though it was a really hard trip, we had a really good time doing it.
Awesome. So before we go, because like we have about 2 more minutes, are you working on any new projects now or any
I
films that we should be looking
am,
out
but I
for?
can't say anything about them.
Oh, it's a secret. Can we say if it's film related, or what is
I
the
have a
genre?
narrative
Or
project that I'm working on and a documentary project that I'm working on. Like,
wow, so you're
yeah.
staying very busy. For independent filmmakers and you listening now, I mean, how do you find how do you keep going? Because I know it's very difficult. You have very little funding. Most indie filmmakers do have very little funding to get work. How do you get your funding? Are you self funding your projects, or or do you have producers who are lining up to work with you?
I don't currently, but
We have like
I'm
about a minute.
accepting applications.
Like I'm accepting handouts, right?
After grad school, I got on a plane and I shot a feature in Africa that I'm still in post production, and I funded that film with credit
Okay.
cards. Not advisable.
Wow.
Not advisable. So that's why the
Mhm.
project's moving forward. I'm not going to do that anymore. I can't afford to.
Mhm.
I have a family. I have student loan debt. I have, my Africa film debt. So now
Right.
that's just not a very sustainable way to do it. It's one thing to have
Right.
one film on credit card, but when you start one and then you want to put another one on, somebody's got to say, no, boo
Right.
boo.
Oh, well, there are people watching, so hey, you're making a call, right? But this was such a great conversation. We're pretty much just about out of time, but it was
You.
really great talking to you, Nikki, and learning more about your documentary. Like I said, it's a really great film. Right now, if you haven't seen it, shame on you. You
99
still have
cents.
time to watch it. Exactly. You can rent it for 99 cents, or you can be a subscriber for $2.99 a month or $19.99 a year. You can watch her great documentary or so many others on our platform. We have about 90 plus films on the platform right now, and and they're all handpicked. We like when I reached out to Nikki and I wanted her documentary on our platform because it fits with our mission. So thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, thank you. And before we go, I do want to let everyone know we do have a crowdfunding campaign, just like Nikki.
Donate.
You can
$50. That's all it takes. Please. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm.
No, please. We are asking people to donate. If you go to our Twitter page, you will see a link to our crowdfunding campaign. And like I said, $50, $100, honestly, $10. We'll be very happy to get whatever, because our goal is to really be a catalyst for change in our community and really take back the voices within our community. This is why Open Wound is one of the documentaries on our platform. So in order for us to grow and continue to grow, we definitely need your support. So I'm going to end with that, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another conversation with another filmmaker. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Nikki, for this great conversation, and enjoy your evening. Oh, girl, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have about 5 more hours. I have 5 hours ahead of me. So good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Bye.